The NFL's Pro Bowl, in theory, has all the potential in the world to be a very highly anticipated event. On paper, you have the best players in the entire world playing alongside each other and playing against each other. It's a formula that, to a little bit of a different extent, also works in something like the World Cup, the biggest sporting event in the entire world. Obviously, those teams are made up of players representing their individual countries. But when we're not in an international cycle, those players are out playing for their respective clubs in respective leagues around the world. But then when the World Cup comes around and they're representing their country, that nation will gather their best players from all these teams and put them together. And it's always really fun because you're seeing the best players in the entire world compete. And it's that same kind of idea that you get with something like the NBA's All Star Game or even the NFL's Pro Bowl. And with as big a success and how influential that the World Cup is, one would think that something like the Pro Bowl or the All Star Game would be more momentous and get a lot of fan interaction and involvement, some that people really look forward to each year, and some that the players are really proud to play in. But the NFL's Pro Bowl does have a two deep rooted and intertwined problems. And we're going to get into those today as well as two solutions. Welcome back to State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts, and today we're talking about the NFL's Pro Bowl problem and how to fix it. So, first of all, we're going to start off with not in my opinion, the primary issue, but one that builds on and leads to the next, and that is player participation. So, I spoke earlier when I was comparing this to, in theory, being kind of similar to the World Cup or the All Star game, where you bring in the best players from their respective teams, and now they're competing for one team. And that player participation is a big way to draw interest. But when it comes to the Pro Bowl, especially in recent years, it seems like there has been a little bit of a lack of player participation. This year, I wouldn't say was particularly bad. We had Drake May as a Pro Bowl alternate, which some people were unhappy about. But at the end of the day, it was better than when we had guys like Tyler Huntley, the Ravens' backup QB, and a couple others in the Pro Bowl a few years ago. So player participation this year wasn't particularly bad, but it does kind of come because typically we do see players opt out, and that's how someone like Drake May even got in the first place. Players do tend to opt out fairly frequently, but why is that? And I think it mainly comes down to kind of the nature of the sport as a whole. There's another reason that we'll get into later when I go into actual solutions here. But obviously, football is a very physical sport. Compare it to baseball or basketball or any other major American sport or sport in the world. It's up there, with something like rugby. Certainly more so than a soccer or a cricket or basketball or baseball. And so as a result of that, players don't really want to, risk going out there and getting hurt. So ultimately, I think it kind of comes down to the individual player. They've already made up their mind somewhat on if they're going to play or not. So there's no end all be all solution to player participation. And so because of that, I can't really view that as the main problem. But this does lead us to our main problem because with a lack of players participating or the nature of the game, not being a lot more lighthearted, less serious than one might, expect from an average NFL game, it does kind of lead to, especially from the hardcore fans, a little bit of fan apathy, which is in my opinion, the main problem with the NFL's Pro Bowl. Because at the end of the day, this is a business, and you can look at the on the field product and say, hey, this is a very competitive game. Why are so many players opting out? But you look at something like the NBA's All Star game, it's not very competitive either. They might score 190 to 180. That might be the final score, right? But fans are able to stay more interested in it than they are in the NFL's Pro Bowl, it seems like. And part of it does come down to players. But in general, this is a business. And at the end of the day, a business is going to want to make their money. And you're gonna get more money from advertisers, from everyone, if more people are out there watching. So if the NFL is really trying to identify a problem, what they're gonna go for is fan apathy and trying to come down to reasons why fans don't really care. And part of that problem can be player participation, but it really goes deeper than that if we're trying to find a solution. So now that we've kind of, at least I've decided that fan apathy is, in my opinion, the biggest problem for the Pro Bowl, especially as a business that the NFL is. How do we solve it? And I've got three answers. So our goals here with these solutions are to increase fan interest and perhaps increase player participation, make players care about it once again. Now, my first solution here is one that caters to the casual fans. I've got two that kind of cater to the casuals, and then one that is maybe little bit more focused on the hardcore fan base. Because at the end of the day, casual fans are going to make up a large majority of people watching sports. No, most people are not going to be uber invested in every single thing going on, in the intricacies and the X's and O's of everything, right? So you do definitely have to do your best to make sure that they're interested in the product, because if they're not, then that's a large portion of your audience that has just been taken out. So my first solution is having more storylines going into it. And here's what I mean by that. In professional sports, obviously as an entertainment source, the main product at a glance is what's going on the field at any given time. However, there's always context behind that. There's always a story to tell alongside it. Ryan Windhorst, a big guy in the NBA media sphere, spoke recently about a lack of storytelling in modern day sports media and how that's just a net negative for it. And I think it can kind of play into the Pro Bowl as well. You tune into an NFL game. Let's just say it's week 14. You've got maybe two bottom tier teams even that are hashing it out, and you just turn it on because there's nothing else to watch. And this product might not be, a Chiefs Eagles, Bills Ravens, right? A Detroit Lions masterclass. This game might not be that. It might be the Jacksonville Jaguars facing off against the New York Giants, right? But if there are storylines going into it, let's say for the Giants, right? Maybe they're trying to find their answer at quarterback after the release of Daniel Jones, or Trevor Lawrence for the Jaguars, this guy who has been given the generational prospect title, but has struggled to live up to that due to some circumstances that are outside of his control, some in his control. But regardless, can he get things back on track? You've got storylines at that quarterback position, and you've got storylines all across the field as well, whether it's how this wide receiver matches up with this cornerback. And you don't have to go in depth on it. Not everyone is in tune to the X's and O's, but to just have stuff going into to pay attention to. It can take a game like Jacksonville, New York, and make it feel like a very intriguing one. So, whether we want to admit it or not, sports are, of course, an entertainment source. And yeah, at surface level, you can argue that the sport being played itself is a primary entertainment, but the story that comes with it and the added drama, that's huge too. And I think especially for casual fans, that's something that can really draw them in. And for someone like the Pro Bowl, there's really not that. There's really not any stakes at play. You had the Manning brothers competing, right? Peyton was coach for the AFC, Eli was coach for the NFC, but at the end of the day, it's for bragging rights, right? And there's no real storylines about, a player trying to prove his value, or this player hasn't been on a very good stretch lately. Let's see if they can put things back together. You don't really have that. And I think that's something that can really get fans tuned in, especially casual ones, and be more focused on the game when there's stakes and there's story and there's drama. Which brings me into solution number 2. I just talked about stakes, and the biggest thing that you can do for stakes is financial incentives. Because at the end of the day, these athletes are trying to create generational wealth for their families. That's the biggest goal on all of their minds, right? That's why quarterbacks, might not take the super team friendly deal where that team could build a better roster around them, because they want to secure their family for generations with the money that they were able to make and cash out while they are still in the prime of their career. In the NFL, they do have some financial incentives for the Pro Bowl. I believe it's 92K goes to a member of the winning team, and then 46K goes to a member of the losing team. But guess what? You're dividing that money between both the winning and losing team. And in my opinion, for players who are making millions upon millions a year, a $46,000 difference isn't going to mean a lot to them. It would mean a lot for someone who's working a 9 to 5 or anyone with a normal with a normal job. But for these athletes, that's not a large sum of money. So even if they lose, they're not worried. They made money ultimately for participating in this Pro Bowl. In my opinion, and you might want to test this to see how it works out player participation wise, I would say to go double or nothing. Take that 92K, take that 46K, and combine it. And the winning players, they receive all that money, and then the losing players, they receive nothing. So now they're playing for about 130,000 instead of a $46,000 difference. At the end of the day, that still might not be a large sum of money, but it's going to mean more to them, especially for guys who might be on rookie scale contracts or just small contracts in general to make 130,000. That's something to compete for. And then for my final solution, I would say take a page out of the NBA's handbook and make it like All-Star Weekend. Make it a little bit more of a celebration. Now, of course, the NFL has stuff outside of the Pro Bowl game itself. They have, the dodgeball tournament, the dodgeball games. They have all those other fun things, right? But then you tune into the Pro Bowl game itself, and you've got many competitions inside of that, like the punting game they had. But then you look over at what the NBA does for All-Star Weekend, and the Pro Bowl, the All-Star game in itself is just that, the All-Star game. And then all your fun competitions that people are interested in, like the slam dunk contest, like the three-point contest, those are their own separate entities. And those are things, especially the three-point contest in recent years, that people can get really, really excited for, as well as something like the Rising Stars game or the Celebrity game. With as big as the NFL as a product is, you could absolutely get celebrities to participate in a flag football game. That would be really entertaining. I think some people would enjoy that, especially casual fans. And for hardcore fans, they might enjoy that Rising Stars game. I would love to see a Rising Stars game in the NFL. Have a team led by Bo Nix versus a team led by Jane Daniels, something like that would be really, really entertaining to have rookie and sophomore players competing. Now, is the NFL going to be able to have something as iconic as the three-point contest or the slam dunk contest? No, those things are really ingrained into the NBA All-Star Weekend. But it's better to make the effort and try to garner both fan interest and player participation than sitting back and doing nothing and allowing fans to just be really apathetic about your product, because that's the worst thing that you can be as a business, is to have fans not really care whatsoever. Something's really good and people are talking about it, or something's really bad and people are talking about it. At least they're talking about it. But when you have something that's just kind of stuck in the middle that people could care less for, that's when no one's talking about it and there's less attention, and that's the worst thing that you can be. So those are three solutions that I have. Is the NFL going to listen to me? Absolutely not. But that is definitely some things that I would like to see happen, and some that could really maybe make the Pro Bowl just a little bit more entertaining. Of course, making it like All-Star Weekend, as well as the storylines, that's going to draw the casual fans in. And then the financial incentives, I think that would just make the game more competitive, and that can draw both casual and hardcore fans alike. And of course, the solution that everyone is going to bring up that I haven't mentioned yet is to just, make it more physical once again. Because this past game, you had Baker Mayfield running alignment at one point, running center. Typically, there's no pass rush, and it goes back to the competitiveness of it. There's really none. But at the end of the day, players don't really want to do that. That's why they would opt out. They didn't want to risk injuries, and that's just kind of the nature of it. But if you bring this stuff in, especially something like the financial incentives, they're going to be encouraged to play a little bit harder. And is it ever going to be super hard hitting once again? Probably not. May it be flag football for a long time? Is that going to continue to be the way it goes? Probably. But you can at least bring more players in with some financial incentives. Because at the end of the day, they're not going to do it if it's too physical. And I understand it, right? As athletes, you have to protect your body. and you don't want to risk it on something that is so low stakes. And especially given that you're going to get the Pro Bowl nod on your resume regardless, even if you opt out. So there's really no incentive for them to do it. So just give them a little bit more money, and this stuff I think could really help and change the Pro Bowl for the better. Because I want to see it succeed, right? I'm a big sports fan, and I don't like when things are going badly for something or players are perform badly. I in an ideal world, I would love to see everything succeeding. And that extends to the Pro Bowl. I want to see it be entertaining. I want to be entertained, but I think there is absolutely work that needs to be done. And so many media outlets or just the general public perception is kind of going to be taking a look at, hey, this Pro Bowl was once again, it went on, nobody cares, right? And it feels like they kind of feed on the negativity of it. But I try to be more positive around here. I think ultimately, if you go into things with a positive mindset and you think rationally, you think logically, you think reasonably, you're going to come out happier and you're going to just set yourself up for success in the future because you're not trying to find the negative in everything. Instead, you're trying to take that negative and turn it into a positive. So, if this was your introduction to the State of the Association, I hope it was a decent one. But regardless, yeah, I don't want to just talk about how the Pro Bowl is getting worse over the years and nobody cares. I want to talk about how we can fix it and make it a better product and throw out some ideas out there that nobody's ever going to listen to, but to just have a positive impact at the end of the day, ultimately. That's my goal with State of the Association. That's my goal in life. It's just to impact people positively, love hard, just kind of be the antithesis of negative media that we see so often, that we consume so often. And when it comes to this Pro Bowl, it's no different. So I've got some solutions to fix it, and I just want to see the Pro Bowl be great again. I'm sure a lot of people hold some great memories to it, and there's fun to be had for sure in moments. I think the Manning brothers can be funny. I kind of enjoy watching stuff like the dodgeball games. I think it's a little bit entertaining, but ultimately it could be so much better, and I want to see the absolute best for it. Because in theory, as we got into in the beginning of this, the Pro Bowl could be really entertaining and something that people really look forward to. So if there can be a collective effort to reach out and make it better, that benefits all involved. The NFL is making plenty of money. It's not going to hurt them to make it a little bit bigger production. I'd love to see that. I'd love to see the Pro Bowl be great once again. And that is all for today's episode of State of the Association. I'm your host, Nash Roberts. Thank you very much for listening.